All right. Well, welcome and thank you so much for joining us for our bi-monthly Bridge Book Club event. Today, we are discussing You Cannot Resist Me When My Hair is in Braids by Frances Kai-Hwa Wang. Today's event is hosted by Bridge, Michigan. If you are not familiar with Bridge, Michigan, if this is your first time tuning into an event like this, Bridge, Michigan is Michigan's nonprofit, nonpartisan news source covering issues that matter to you and to your community. You can subscribe for free to Bridge at bridgemi.com. And for those who are current Bridge Club members, people who have donated to Bridge over the past year, that's what a member means to us, those folks get a number of benefits, including access to free ebook copies of each Bridge Book Club selection. You can become a member today by visiting the links that we'll drop in the chat in just a moment. If I didn't introduce myself already, my name is Amber DeLind. I'm the Membership and Engagement Director at Bridge, Michigan. I'm also joined today by my colleague, Josiah Foster, who's our Fund Development Associate, and who will be monitoring the chat throughout today's discussion. But without any further ado, I'm so excited to say that we're lucky to be joined by author Frances Kai-Hwa Wang. I'll give a full introduction of Frances momentarily, but we're incredibly honored that she was willing to join us for a discussion of the book today. Just a brief overview of what you can expect for today's discussion. Like I mentioned, I will give an introduction of our special guest in just one moment. I'll then have a discussion with Frances about the book for about 35 to 40 minutes or wherever our conversation takes us. And then at that point, we will turn to any question that you have for our special guest. So if you have questions for Frances at any point throughout the discussion, even while we're doing the moderated portion, please feel free to type those in the chat. Josiah is going to be collecting those so that we can ask them when it comes to the time for reader questions. As you heard at the beginning, we will be recording this discussion and we'll be posting that recording on bridgemi.com tomorrow, most likely, so that if you would like to watch again, would like to share the recording with your friends, or if you know anyone who missed it who would like to see it, you'll be able to find it on our website. So without any further ado, I will turn to our introduction and biography. Frances Kai-Hwa Wang is a journalist, essayist, speaker, activist, and poet focused on issues of diversity, race, culture, and the arts. The child of immigrants, she was born in Los Angeles, raised in Silicon Valley, and now divides her time between Michigan and the Big Island of Hawaii. She has worked in philosophy, ethnic new media, anthropology, international development, nonprofits, and small business startups. She teaches courses on Asian Pacific Islander American media and civil rights at the University of Michigan, and she teaches creative writing at University of Hawaii Hilo and Washtenaw Community College. She is a 2019 Knight Arts Challenge Detroit winner, Marguerite Casey Foundation Equal Voice Journalism Fellow on Poverty, and Keith Center for Civic Rights Detroit Equity Action Lab Race and Justice Reporting Fellow on Arts and Culture. Frances, thank you so much for being here and welcome to this month's book club event. So I think I will just get us started with our very first discussion question, which I just love for you to tell us a little bit more about yourself and why you chose to write You Cannot Resist Me When My Hair is in Braids.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of Bridge, Michigan book club. I love Bridge, Michigan. I should tell you, I rely on you guys on your reporting all the time. And I'm just really thrilled to be here and with so many people. So thank you all for coming. Well, this book. So I'm a writer, and I've been in the Ann Arbor. How do I start this? So I first came out to Michigan for graduate school. I grew up in California, and I came here for graduate school, like so many of us have done. And I'm still here. So so that's the short story. And but in trying to process and understand how I should, how to live here, how to raise my children here, how to build a community here, I started writing, a long time ago. And I tended to divide my writing up between journalism and essays, and then like the really personal stuff was prose poetry. And I just wrote it because I had to get it out. I had to figure out those emotions and those thoughts, and then I put it away. for years. And it's really only in the last few years that I started like bringing it up to the light of day and realizing that this is okay. You know, it's good writing and it's good and it's interesting. So anyway, during so in the past, I've written like these 3 chapbooks, which is kind of you know, handmade, hand bound, printed locally, Colossus Printing, and I wrote those, you know, slowly over time, and it seemed to work, right? And then I met the people at Wayne State University Press, and they were so kind, and they said, you know, when you're ready, we want a creative nonfiction book from you. And I'm like, okay, when I have time. And then the pandemic happened, and so you know, suddenly with the pandemic, as happened to all of us, right? Suddenly there's no work, there's no grant, there's no arts funding, there's no traveling, because I used to travel a lot to go to events and do public speaking, and all that has stopped. And so not that I had nothing to do, but I started actually making progress on my to-do list, getting things checked off. So it took, of course, from March to November to get everything checked off. But by November, I suddenly had a week of time. And so I went back and I looked at all my pieces that I'd written before, and I put them together and said, I wonder if this could be a book. And so I pulled it together, and it looked like a book, and I sent it to Wayne State, and they say, yeah, it looks like a book. And they said yes right away, which never happens in the publishing process normally. But and so I'm really pleased. I have a real book now.
That's such a cool story, and it goes right into a question I had as I was reading, was sort of about your experience in publishing the book. So as you've sort of the collection, like you said, of writings that you've done over time, like, did you ever envision that it would be a larger collection, or was this something that Wayne State Press came to you with as an idea? Or tell us a little bit more about that process.
Yeah, I think a lot of these pieces I wrote one by one. So it's like one project, write it first. So like the first piece in the book, Dreams of the Diaspora, this piece, Dreams of the Diaspora, I actually wrote that for the Smithsonian, because the Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center, they had this big exhibition called Beyond Bollywood. First time they've covered Indian American heritage at the Smithsonian. And they realized they didn't have anything on the H-1B visa. So they put out a call for artwork, which they never do. Smithsonian never does this, but they put out a call for artwork. And my friends and I, we got together and we said, can we do something for this? And so we wrote the poem, and we created this multimedia art piece, and I think it's beautiful, if you ask me.
Agreed.
And I can say that because it's not my pictures, but it turned out really well. And then a lot of and that's how that piece came together. And I was like, oh, I can, that my writing is good. And also I can create kind of other kinds of artwork with it. And so some of the other pieces are created for art shows, and some of them come with art installations. And one of the pieces actually right now, Sewing Aunties, towards the end, that I created for an art show, like a pandemic environmentalism art show in San Francisco. But right now it's being shown at the Matai Botanical Gardens for their 100th anniversary of the Peony Gardens. And so there's an art show up, and I'm going to be reading later in the month at their reception. And so that's how, anyway, so each piece is created on its own without, of course, like all writers, I want to do a book someday. So I always reserve that option and think forward. But I didn't write these like writing a book. I didn't like start at the beginning and go to the end. I waited till I had all these pieces together and brought them together to see.
Very cool. Thank you for explaining that. I'll admit that I read a lot. That's one of the hobbies, one of the things I like to do in my free time. But I primarily read fiction, novels. So that at first I was a little intimidated by the format. I haven't read a lot of essay collections, but I just found each so unique and powerful and emotional. And I thank you for explaining it a bit more, the process. And I did love the sort of the inclusion of some of the art and the photography that sometimes accompanied those pieces. And it's helpful to understand the ways in which that they may have lived and been displayed in other exhibits. So thank you. This question, and at first I didn't know, because I don't read on my own a ton of nonfiction. I was curious as I was reading, are these personal stories? Are these fictional? So my question for you is, these essays, like I say, are so beautiful and personal and often vulnerable. Is each essay autobiographical? And if so, did you have any conflicting feelings about sharing so much of yourself with the world? Can you tell us a little more about that?
Because my mother is here, these are all fiction, completely fiction, and but they are prose poetry, and prose poetry, while and lyric essays also. They're not like straight normal essays, they're lyric essays. So lyric essays live right in that intersection between prose poetry and essay. So I was able to have a lot of space to kind of create and try to be creative and try to experiment with form a little bit, because a lot of, let me say this, I think of myself, of all the different kinds of writing I do think of myself as an essayist first. And as an essayist, I try to keep everything, very factual and very straightforward, in part because over time I won't remember. So I want it to all be true. But I feel like, you said you read fiction. I don't think I could write straight fiction, because I don't know if I'm creative enough to make up straight fiction. So anyway, so as prose poetry, we have some space to maneuver, some creative space to maneuver. And I think a lot of these are emotionally true, even if not all the details are there, because as prose poetry, able to take some creative liberties to tell a larger story. So it's not just, it's not my diary. It's definitely not a diary. It's not a day-to-day of my life, but it is a way that in my writing, I was trying to figure things out. Like, how do I feel about this? How do I feel about that? Does this make sense? Does this not make sense? And so that's how I, emotionally process my life. And so I think, so and then in terms of conflicting feelings, right? Yeah. When I first wrote, my first chapbook, actually that happened with my first chapbook. I had a friend who wanted to do a photography show. Oh, Jyoti Omichodori, who does the photographs in my book. He wanted to do an art show and said, is there, any place I could do a show? And I'm like, oh, Carytown Concert House, no problem. I know all the people there. I got him in, and they said, but they wanted me to go too, because they didn't know who he was, but they did know me, and they want to make sure we together could bring an audience. Sure. And so I thought, well, if he's going to be selling photographs, I want something in hand to sell too. So, which is why I put together this first chapbook in very short amount of time, but it's pieces I wrote over 20 years that I thought I would keep hidden, in the figurative bottom drawer of my desk forever, until everyone died, or until I died, or something like that. I was really afraid at first what my children would think. And I was really surprised. They were actually, the older ones at the time were not horrified, and were very enthusiastic and proud of it. So it's okay. It turned out to be okay. I was very nervous about that, but
I can see why they were proud of it. That's very good. Thank you for sharing that. So, you mentioned that, each of these essays does have a bit of a different form. Can you tell us a little bit about your writing process? How do you decide sort of what form each story that you're telling will take?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I just start writing, right? Like if I have an issue, like usually I'm stuck on something, I'm confused, I'm sad, I write. So it probably starts more like a journal format, or actually a lot of my pieces start off as emails. I always say, actually, in terms of a writing tip that I always give my writing students at WCC, it's like, if you're ever stuck, just write "Dear so-and-so" at the top of the page, and then write a letter to one specific person that that you want to tell the story to. And then when you're done, take that off and then, generalize it a little bit so other people understand. But, these a lot of my pieces do start off as emails or stories that I want to tell or something that's bugging me. And even sometimes I dream journal every now and again, not very regularly, but those sort of things. So they all come together. And then and then after I write it down, usually I'll find the connections and find a theme. And then if there's an art show or a call for art or a call for writing that looks close, then I can nudge it towards that direction. So like, for example, Sewing Aunties was very much about COVID, about taking care of our elders and about gardening, which I've never done before COVID. And then this art show came up and they wanted something environmental. And I'm like, oh, environmentalism, how can I, add a line or two to make it about environmentalism? And then it came together as a piece.
It sure did. Very cool. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's one thing that I've learned from our readers is that oftentimes, we've read so many different types of books and our readers are often so interested in sort of the process of writing. So I really appreciate you sharing about kind of how all these things all come together. So this collection includes a discussion of many of the hashtags of the moment, as sort of the book promotional material says. How have readers reacted to these important and often painful subjects? I know you've been sort of traveling a lot to do a lot of readings and discussions like this. How are readers reacting to these topics?
I think people, are reacting positively. I mean, this is Ann Arbor, so we're, more concerned about social justice issues than some other places. But again, a lot of the pieces are written, in specific moments of time. And so like Crying on Airplanes, for example, I wrote it right after ProPublica released. It was when those families were being separated at the border and ProPublica released that horrible audio of the children crying after being separated from their parents, and the kids are being shipped on airplanes all around the country. And I happened to be on an airplane and my daughter was like, not sitting with me. She's like sitting a few rows behind, but she's like 18 years old. We're on the same plane. I should not be worried. But as a mother, I'm still worried about her. And I'm like, this worry is nothing compared to these poor families. And I happened to be going to a poetry reading. And so I actually wrote that poem on an airplane on the way to a poetry reading because it was happening right then. And I'm like, I have to say something about this now. And in the moment, it was so powerful. I mean, I think it still is, but in the moment, wow, it was it was a lot of tears going on there.
I can only imagine. That one had me tearing because it brought that back for me. I remember, that moment in time, and my goodness. So I can't imagine how powerful it was just as we were all sort of processing this horror simultaneously. And this is kind of another reader reaction question. Many of the readers who are participating in today's discussion are from Michigan or live in Michigan currently because we are a statewide publication. I'm curious about how Michigan readers specifically are reacting to the book, particularly the Vincent Chin and COVID-19 essay.
Thank you. This is part of Wayne State University's Press's Made in Michigan series, which is a great series and opportunity for people who want to write about Michigan. And so there's lots of little places in here that if you know that you can spot, right? It's kind of, and people have been having fun with kind of finding places. So for example, there's a piece called Haircut Aunties that it's just described as these hot pink awnings. And John Hilton, who's the editor of the Ann Arbor Observer, as soon as he read the hot pink awnings, he's like, I know that place. and he took that piece and he published it in the Observer. And then I was telling this story at the Ann Arbor District Library, and the librarian is sitting up on stage with me. All of a sudden she goes, I know where that is. And so it's kind of fun, I think, for people. I mean, it's always fun for me when I read and I suddenly realize that I know a place. And so yeah, I'm and it's fun. I think it's fun because I mean, even for like fiction, like I said, sometimes I feel like I'm not that creative in terms of making something up from whole cloth, but place it's is easier, right? When you can imagine, whether you identify it or not, you imagine it. So the Huron River is in there, Gallup Park is in there. Where else? The DIA, DTW, all these places that are, so in a way, it's a homage. That's not the right word. It's kind of a, in a way, it's a little love story, love letter to Michigan and Ann Arbor, which is very surprising to me that I would suddenly feel this way. And then, and then the Vincent Chin piece, I wrote that at the beginning of the pandemic. I can't even remember the years anymore, but for the Detroit Public Television, they were having a special event, a Zoom event about the Vincent Chin case, and asked me to write a poem about it. And so I was able to bring in all the things that were happening with COVID and anti-Asian American violence that were on my mind, as well as a historical, telling of the story, but brief and poetic form. So I really like that piece. And so that's been reprinted in, lots of places already. So it's in this book. It's reprinted. The humanities professors at the University of Michigan, oops, not here, wrote a book called Being Human During COVID, and it's all humanities professors from Michigan, and that piece is in there. And coming up in June, The Emancipator, which is a new magazine in Boston, they're doing a series of Vincent Chin essays and poems, and so it'll be there too.
Fantastic. Thank you. So I couldn't help but notice as I read your biography that you are like the ultimate multi-hyphenate, a professor, a journalist, an essayist, a speaker, an activist, a poet. I feel like I always wondered how Beyonce did it, but I feel like she may have just been watching you to learn. So first of all, when do you sleep? And how do you manage all this important work that you do? How do you do all these different things?
Yeah, well, I have 4 children, so I never sleep. I never have. And so, yeah, sleep is hard. But yeah, I just try to, until now, I've been freelancing. So as a freelancer, you just juggle and juggle and juggle. And you have to do that to make all the pieces fit together so that you can make a little money and have a little fun and do some important work. And so it's all so far just kind of fit together really nicely. Recently, I got a full-time job, which is new for me. And I don't know. So juggling is becoming more difficult, but I've been able, because I do have this new position at PBS NewsHour, I've cut down. So I only have 3 jobs now. Before I had like 7 or 8, but only 3. So it should be much easier now. Actually, it is much easier now.
Excellent. Thank you. And congratulations on that.
Thanks.
Okay. So I think probably we'd all answer this question differently, but I'm curious from your own perspective. The essays capture so many memorable and kind of vivid moments. Do you have a favorite in the collection?
Oh, favorite essay. Gosh, let me think. I think I'm looking really quickly.
No problem.
There's moments that I actually really like. Dreams of the Diaspora, I think is beautiful, if I do say so myself. And they're all different. I like it's hard to say which one do I like the best. I like there's moments of actually the scenes that I like the best because they're scattered throughout, but like in Tsundere Pride and Poignant Truth, Precarious You, there's scenes of high school girls and like hanging out with high school girls, listening to them, talk about their lives. And those are like my favorite scenes. Those are probably my favorite moments in life as well. Because high school girls, man, they are tough and they're smart and they're sharp and they don't, there's no pretense about it. They will tell you, they will tell you the way it is. And so I learned so much from them.
That's really cool. I love some of those scenes. It felt they felt very true. And, memories came back, and I have a daughter, but she's very young. And I was like, I know those moments are coming. Those were really neat. All right. Well, thank you. I've been noticing that Tamika Wong has been dropping some different places where we can see some of your work in the chat. That's very exciting. Are there any other places or events that readers can go to that you want to highlight out loud while we're all together?
You mean in terms of upcoming readings?
Yeah, or anything that that you just want people to know about.
Sure. Well, I'm doing a reading next Sunday, June 12th at Ypsilanti District Library in person, which is, a new thing. It feels like a new thing. So we'll be there with Ypsilanti Library. On June 23rd, I'm doing there's going to be a free showing of Who Killed Vincent Chin. And I'm organizing a panel with artists and activists, and we'll have this big art installation in the lobby, which is really cool, and made by Celeste Chamor Godert and Jenna Rien and Eileen. So anyways, it's a big collaborative project. So that's June 23rd, and that'll be a really interesting piece, although not strictly about the book. And then on June 26th, Sunday, I'm doing a reading in Matai Botanical Gardens, which I think will be fun because there'll be this whole art show with about the peony gardens.
Well, that'll be beautiful. In addition to being a place that you'll hear a lot and see a lot of really great things. That's very cool. Thank you for sharing those things with us, especially because I know some of the folks here are probably in the Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti, or at least Metro Detroit area. So I just wanted to make sure that if there are ways to see your work that others knew about it.
Yeah. Oh, also I'm reading at Serendipity Books in Chelsea at the end of June, Nicholas Books at the end of July, and so feel free to tell your favorite bookstore and your favorite library to invite me. I'm happy to come out and read at your local place. And, if anyone wants to nominate me for the Washington Reads or the Michigan Braids, I would not say no.
Absolutely. I hope that we have lots of people listening to that right now.
Yeah, because I think it's all about, it takes place all over, Washington
Totally.
County and Michigan. And it's kind of fun. I think it's fun when you know the place.
I agree. That's something that I loved. And there were moments that I was like, oh yeah, I've been there, or I've seen that. That's pretty neat. I just have a few more questions for you before I want to turn to some reader questions that we've received. I'm curious to know, one of the sort of the themes that I noticed as I was reading were sort of themes of sort of family and belonging and home. As you've written about this and you've lived in many places, what does home mean to you? What do you think of when you write about home?
That's a great question. It used to just be wherever my mom was, right? Home used to be California at my mom's house. And then my mom got tired of waiting for me to come home from Michigan, because I came to Michigan for graduate school. It's only supposed to be like 3 or 4 years. And it turned out to be a lot longer than that. So my mom and dad got tired of waiting for me to come back home. So then they moved. Like, parents are not supposed to do that, but they sold the house and they retired and they moved to Hawaii. And so then, we used to go home to California every summer, and then we shifted and went to Hawaii every summer. It's good for the kids to have grandparent time, and it's really important for that. But now slowly, now that my kids are getting bigger and they're starting to go off on their own, and then they are coming home to Michigan, it's kind of a weird feeling. Like, I think I'm right in the middle of that transition now. Like, where is home? I'm kind of, it's shifting for me now. And it hasn't been, where I am now. It hasn't been that until just recently.
Sure. Before I sort of turn to some reader questions, my last question for you is, what are you working on now? And is there anything that readers should be looking forward to, or places they can catch you?
What am I working on now? I'm working for PBS NewsHour. as part of their communities initiative, which is an initiative to try to learn more about communities that are not on the coasts and not on big cities. And officially, I'm reporting on Dearborn, which is interesting because you would think for something like that, they would hire for Detroit, but they hired for Dearborn. And luckily for me, because if it was Detroit, I don't think I would have been hired, but Dearborn, I know. And so I'm writing about, but then it turns out I'm actually writing about all of Michigan. And because I've been writing about Asian American and Pacific Islander communities my whole career, I'm also, they're continuing to let me write about those. So I'm reporting on Michigan and reporting about Asian America and Pacific Islanders, and that's at PBS NewsHour. If you look under, oh, thanks, Tamika. Tamika's great with the links. So you can see that there. And so, and if people have good stories, you know, like I have one story. Oh, it's still in process, but I relied heavily on Sergio's reporting to learn the background of the issue. Sergio at Bridge, Michigan, I relied heavily on his reporting to learn what was going on. So thank you, Bridge, Michigan.
Of course, that's actually,
But,
I'd love, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking, so that's the journalism, that's pretty much filling my time right now. And I'm just starting to think, wow, when will I have time to go back to the creative? And so I'm trying to, I guess, figure out, you know, the new life, you know, the life of an artist. I don't know. I was looking during the pandemic, or before the pandemic, I was looking for a new genre. And I discovered during the pandemic, art installation with found objects. I'm like, oh, this can be me. I can do this. And so hopefully I can get back to that one of these days. I don't know, sometime soon.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of Sergio, I just wanted to share that how I was able, you know, I'm constantly asking readers for your ideas about what books you might like to read for Bridge Book Club. All of our selections have a connection to Michigan in some way. And Sergio Martinez Beltran, who was one of our Capital reporters who we all adore and miss greatly because he just took a job in Texas, reporting for Texas Public Radio. When he reached out, one of the last things that we chatted about before he took that job was that you've got to get in touch with Frances. I'm like her #1 fan. This book is amazing. So we all have Sergio to thank for this specific connection. But it's one that I know that I've heard from readers in our Facebook discussion group and beyond, that this is just something that we've all really enjoyed. But speaking of readers, I would like to turn to some reader questions now, if that's okay. Great. And also, if you have come up with any questions that you'd like to ask, feel free to drop those in the chat at any time. But my first question that we received, Amelia says, "Hi, Frances. I've always admired your wonderful range as a writer. How does your creative work influence your journalism and vice versa?" And then she has a couple of follow-up questions, but I'll do them one at a time.
Oh gosh. Thanks, Amelia. Good to see you. I think, well, with journalism, right, there's a certain way of doing journalism, right? You're supposed to stick to the facts and you're supposed to be objective, but, you know, we're all human. So, you know, what does objective mean, right? And also at the same time, we're all human. We all react emotionally to these stories. And so a lot of time when you're in the middle of it, you don't have, first of all, you don't have time to be emotional. You just do the story, get the work done. And then afterwards, when you're done, it's submitted, it's published, you have a moment to kind of breathe. And then there's a lot of emotional, you know, then you react, right? And so what do you do with this? And as a journalist, there's no real place to put it. So that's when I started putting it into prose poetry. Or sometimes if there was a news item that was big in my community, but I didn't happen to have a place to publish it, then I would write about it in a creative way instead. Yeah, so recently there was a story. Let me see this. Recently there was a story about the bombers, the Boston Marathon bombers, and they were in the news in the Supreme Court. Something happened with their case recently, and I worked on that all day. But all I could think about when I was working was like, oh my gosh, I wrote a poem about them years ago. I'm pretty sure it's in my book. But I'm not even going to look at it. I'm just going to do the work. And I did the work and I waited till 5 o'clock. So it's officially done for the day. And then when I looked in my book and there it was. It's just a little story about kind of reacting to them at the time of the Boston Marathon bombing. And I took a picture of it and I sent it to my editor and said, this has been in the back of my mind. And she so appreciated it, you know, that just because we are human, we are people, we do react to these things as well. And that's kind of the hard part about being a journalist.
Absolutely. Actually, Amelia's follow-up question kind of goes right to that. So she also asked, are there sort of any downsides to code switching as you do? And has your creative work ever caused difficulties for you as a journalist?
It has not caused difficulty yet because I've always been a freelancer. So as a freelancer, you know, you have much more liberty to do what you want and say what you want. Now I'm not so sure. I'm much more careful now. Because you're not supposed to have opinions, right? When people come to my door and ask me to sign petitions, I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm a journalist, I can't sign petitions. But I think it's still, I don't know. Yeah, so anyways, I'm just really careful these days to try to keep lines. There are a lot of lines that we draw and we try to keep those lines clear. And what is fiction and what is not fiction, what is poetry and what is not.
Thank you for sharing that. You know that's even for members of the Bridge team and the Bridge Detroit team. That's something we talk about as a staff, is how you keep those lines and the ways in which that can be difficult sometimes. Because you are still a human being, and what's the best way to approach. So I appreciate you sharing that, and I know I've felt that myself. So.
Yeah. Oh, also, because I've been writing essays for a long time, right? That's opinion. So the other thing is making essays clearly marked as essays, right? This is opinion. And then in poetry, clearly marked, this is poetry. So that helps.
Excellent. Mary asks, would you talk about your time in Kathmandu? Why were you there? Or when were you there? Why? And have you been back?
Oh my gosh. So this is the piece about Kathmandu. Is that a picture? Oh, here we go. And the photographs are gorgeous. They're by Jyoti Choudhury. Texting nostalgic for Kathmandu. And this I wrote originally for Cha magazine, which is an international poetry journal out of Hong Kong, that they wanted something international about Asia. And my friend, the photographer Jyoti Choudhury, happened to be going there for one of his for some work related thing, and then I started thinking about it again, and then I wrote that piece. But originally, I went to Kathmandu because I met a cute boy, and as these things, most of my stories start out. I met a cute boy. And we went to Kathmandu. We lived there for 4 years. He was an anthropologist, and I was a grad school dropout, and so I started writing creatively while I was there, just for something to do, and again to process all the emotions of graduate school and this completely new scene that I was in that I knew nothing about, and then I started writing for international development agencies. I started writing for English language newspapers and journals there. And so my writing, my journalism career actually started in Kathmandu, which is a very weird way to go. I actually was hired to be a TV anchor while I was there too, but right before it was a new station they were about to launch, and then they got caught smuggling gold in their equipment. So and so that ended before it even started. But yeah, the Kathmandu is a wild place. No, it's not wild. That's the wrong word. It's a beautiful place. It's full of diversity, but people are aware of that diversity and how do you talk about diversity and how do you negotiate that. And so for me, it was actually a really good way to process the diversity in America, because it's a different setting, but there were a lot of lessons to be learned there.
Sure. Have you been back since you went?
No, I've wanted to go back someday soon. I joined the board of New York Writers Workshop because they were doing a writing retreat in Kathmandu. And I thought, this is my way, I'll go with them. And then COVID happened. And so it was postponed, and then it was postponed again. And I don't know if they'll go anymore. But yeah, someday I hope to go back. I still have friends there, and there's still people I want to see. And I would really like to do, yeah, there's some stories I would like to tell there, because now I'm, when I went, I was like, 25 years old. Like, what did I know then? So it would be nice to know to go again.
Absolutely. Another reader question. Karen asks, can you talk about the decision for the title? And if you have time and you're interested, could you read "You Cannot Resist Me When My Hair Is in Braids"? She says she's a big fan.
Yeah. Oh, that would be lovely. So the poem takes place in, or rather, this is set. It doesn't take, but the setting for the poem is in downtown Ann Arbor at Sweetwater's Cafe. They have, a whole wall full of big floor-to-ceiling windows and these tall top tables. And I used to sit there and write all the time, and look out the windows and watch the people walk by. And so that's the inspiration for this. This poem, also in Ann Arbor, it's an academic town. So every September, there's a new crop of cute young professors coming into town, and so I'm I'm kind of an academic at heart, and so I have a lot of friends who are academics, and I have a weakness for cute young professors, Oh, and then the question about the braids. So that's the inspiration for the poem. And then the part about the braids is, so for, and it's a cultural thing. And yet it's so like Chinese, like Asian, a lot of Asian girls and Asian American girls, you'll see them when they're little, they wear their hair in braids, their mom braid, two neat braids, nice and neat and tidy. But after a certain point, people don't wear braids anymore, right? At a certain age, it's kind of like it's just not really age appropriate. But I like braids, and so I keep wearing them, and I wear them. I know, when I need to like get out and do something, get something done, whether it's writing or going out and picking up trash with the crew team at the stadium. So I wear my hair in braids all the time anyway. And so it's kind of cultural, but it's also kind of not cultural because it's not quite right. And it's also kind of inappropriate. And yet I love it anyway. And it's just this whole mix and jumble. Plus my mom always, my mom, when she was young, her braids were like this thick. She always told me, oh, my braids were this thick. They're so much thicker than yours. I don't know what's wrong with you. Your hair is too thin. So, it's a criticism as well. And it's also an assertion, right? On top of all this, it's like, you know what? This is maybe not the right thing to do, but I am going to do this. And so a lot of the book, I think there's like a recurring refrain in the book, like I write myself into existence. Like I decide I am going to do this. I declare I'm going to do this. And the whole writing process and the creative process, it's all mixed into this. And it's about taking a stand and I don't know, claiming a new, not declaring a new life and making it exist just, by an affirmation. But do you want me to read it now?
I would love you to if you're willing.
Yeah, so this is great. This is a great book. I really like this. And it's a fun title. It's a great title. Okay, here it is. All right. Anything else? Yeah, I just also wanted to note this. It does, when we're talking about handsome young professors, right? I've been talking about my crushes on handsome young professors my entire life, right? Because this is a long-standing thing for me. And I only realized like a year ago that I should probably specify that this is as an adult, like not as an inappropriate student thing, and then when I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, I've been saying this all these years. What have people been thinking about me? But no, this is as an adult in an academic town. So anyway, sitting in Sweetwater's cafe for the afternoon with a pot of Earl Grey tea, trying to write, trying to put off looking for a day job, trying to figure out how to construct a new beginning out of all this financial ruin. All the while watching the cute boys walk past my window on this cold gray day, wishing for some handsome young professor to walk in and flirt with me for a bit. I've got my hair in braids today. You cannot resist me when my hair is in braids.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me share that.
Of course. And thank you to Karen for the question and the suggestion. Frances, this has been such a delight. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. It has been my absolute pleasure and an honor. I'm going to pass the microphone, the proverbial microphone, over to my colleague Josiah to sort of close us out for the day. But before I do, is there anything that you wanted to say, or any final words you want to share with the audience here?
Oh, just thank you all so much for coming, and thanks for reading my book and sharing your thoughts. I've been watching all the conversation on the Facebook group page, and I'm just thrilled. I never thought so many people would be reading my book and enjoying my book like this. So it's really it's fun. It's fun, and hopefully I get back to writing again soon.
Fantastic. Take it away, Josiah.
All right, I want to thank you, Frances. I want to thank you, Amber, for just having this discussion with all of our readers. And I want to thank our readers and our members just for being here, taking an hour out of your day just to be with us. I want to remind you that we will be posting this recording on Bridge, Michigan about this week. So be on the lookout for that. I want to announce that we will be resuming our book club August 10th. Be on the lookout for the announcement of our book, which is coming soon. I want to remind you that any member is eligible to receive our next book club selection for free if you become a Bridge Club member. So if you want to donate any amount to Bridge, you are automatically a member. So it's a great benefit. Again, I want to thank you so much for being here. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful weekend. And Frances, I will see you probably in Ypsilanti on the 12th.
Yay! Thank you so much.
Thanks all. Have a great afternoon. Bye.